CBC News has learned a U.S. billionaire and two of her executives flew a private plane from Chicago to Toronto last month, and they didn't have to go into a 14-day quarantine when they landed. They say they were granted a formal exemption from this government. CBC's investigative reporter Jonathan Gatehouse joins us now with more details. Hi, Jonathan. Thanks so much for making time for us. Tell us exactly what happened here.
Well, here's what we know, Vasi, that on the 25th of August, a private jet flew into Pearson Airport in Toronto, and on board was Liz Uihlein, who is the CEO of Uihlein Incorporated in Wisconsin, and two of her executives. Now, Uihlein is a company that sells things like boxes, packing supplies, shipping supplies, janitorial supplies. We know that they spent 36 hours in Canada visiting the company's facility in Milton, Ontario. And we also know that at one point during their visit, police were called due to a complaint that the American executives were holding face-to-face meetings without wearing masks.
So who is Liz Uihlein exactly?
Yeah, well, she's not exactly a household name here in Canada or even in the United States. So we asked Brendan Quinn from the Center for Responsive Politics in Washington, D.C., to put her and her husband Richard into context.
Two of the most influential donors nationwide, not just in Republican circles, but overall. So they're actually the biggest Republican givers so far this cycle. So they're a big deal.
And in fact, the Uihleins are the top Republican donors since the 2018 midterm elections, having given some $40 million US in that period, and over the last 10 years, about $100 million to the Republican Party. They're also quite tight with President Donald Trump. Liz Uihlein was an economic advisor during his run for office in 2016 and has shown up at several White House events. Now, what really might be of some concern to Canadians are a couple of things. One is that Liz Uihlein shares the president's views on the coronavirus crisis and in fact has been an outspoken critic about some of the measures that governments have taken. She's called them overhyped and bad for business. She's also been critical of the media, suggesting that the media has overblown the scope of the crisis. And the other thing here is that these exemptions, these special exemptions, are supposed to be given for people of national interest or for people who are critical to the fight against COVID-19. An example that we've been given is, someone involved in the manufacture or repair of ventilators for hospitals. And it's really not clear how Liz Uihlein and these executives would qualify under those criteria.
Yeah, I think that's what's so interesting, Jonathan, for our viewers, because we've covered so often on this show, for example, the government announcing that the border restrictions, even last night, Katie Simpson was on saying those border restrictions are going to be extended until close to the end of October. They're very tight restrictions. There are some exemptions, but we know that there have been people trying to be reunited with their families, for example, who have not yet been able to secure an exemption. So I think your story here will be of great interest to our viewers. I know that you also went to the government to find out how exactly this happened, what their response is. What did they tell you?
Well, first we also went to Uihlein, and what Uihlein told us was that they received a formal exemption from quarantine from the federal government, but they wouldn't say from which department. So we went to the government. We know that there are only 5 people in the federal government who are empowered to grant these exemptions. It's Bill Blair, the public safety minister, Patty Hajdu, the health minister, François-Philippe Champagne, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Marco Mendicino, the Minister of Immigration, along with Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam. We asked all of them these questions over a period of weeks. None of them would confirm that they were the ones who signed off on these exemptions. We've also got a situation here where the grounds that we're being given are privacy grounds. That's the explanation. They say that they can't identify the individuals or even the companies who have made these applications. But curiously, it is public knowledge that the federal government has granted these exemptions to professional hockey players and Major League Baseball players. So something here doesn't compute.
Very interesting point. I should note that we asked for Ministers Hajdu, Blair, and Mendicino to appear on the program tonight, and all 3 declined our invitation. Thanks for the update and for the details, Jonathan. Appreciate it. The CBC's Jonathan Gatehouse. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.